Welcome to Be Provided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa.
We are live now, so welcome to this Facebook event today. I am Marcia Civic, and I am the host for Be Provided Conservation Radio. And I'm excited today to have Bill Leikam here, the Fox guy, with me today. And just to share some logistics before we get started, I wanted to let you know you can leave questions in the comment box below, and we will get to them, hopefully, as they come up, or we will answer them at the end. So, in any case, if we don't get to everybody's questions, if there are a lot, we will try to answer. This will be posted on Facebook, and we'll try to answer after the show as well if we can. So, but before we get started today about our conversation about the gray fox, I wanted to share a little bit about Bill. He's our gray fox storyteller today, and he is also the co-founder and president of the Urban Wildlife Research Project. And this project works to document the behavior and protect habitat for gray foxes in our Bay Area. And shrinking habitat, unfortunately, has led to the decimation of the gray fox population, and we'll talk more about that. And so the Urban Wildlife Research Project is working hard to provide wildlife corridors to provide adequate room for the fox and other wildlife to live and raise their young, to hopefully avoid this decimation again, I hope. And Beth Pratt, who you know as the P22 mountain lion expert, in her book, When Mountain Lions Are Neighbors, referred to my guest today as the Jane Goodall of the gray fox. And since 2009, Bill has conducted unprecedented, groundbreaking research on the behavior of our local gray fox. So, and this was a surprise to me. Among his talent as a fox whisperer and scientist, he is also a published live jazz reviewer for All About Jazz. And what a range of talent. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Martha.
Yeah, I was surprised about, it was nice. It was interesting to see that you're a jazz reviewer. That's awesome.
Yeah, although I retired from that job, the foxes just seemed to take over, and I couldn't keep both of them going because with the jazz writing, I always had deadlines.
Yeah.
And it was just overwhelming. So when Pete Douglas died, I just decided that I'm going to end it too. And I did.
Yeah. Do you still listen to jazz often, or?
Well, yeah, I like to go to live concerts, live jazz. I don't tend to listen to it on CDs or anything like that, or radio, and so forth. It's the live experience that captures my interest. And that holds true as well for the work that I'm doing with the foxes. Live on the ground all the time. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get to see exactly what those foxes are doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So most of your time is spent out in the field, and
twice a day.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Before we get started talking about the gray fox, I want you to share a little bit about yourself as well. And I hope that you're going to introduce us to the beautiful gray fox behind you as well. But yeah, and in our previous conversations, you shared an interesting story with me of growing up in Watsonville near the Corlitas Creek, where you saw your first fox at the age of 13, I believe. So I was hoping that you could share how this all began with you, because that was an interesting story about you and your brother starting out, and to where you are now is quite a transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was, I was about 13, maybe 14, early 14, when I discovered that there were gray foxes down on the Corralitos Creek, just a stone's throw from where we live. And so, knowing that, my dad knew a guy who ran a fur farm, not foxes. It was one of those little, I don't remember exactly what they were.
Like mink or?
Smaller.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the point is that my brother and I conjured up this idea that we'd go trap the foxes live, bring them back home, and then sell them to this guy for fur.
Wow.
We didn't want to do any of the fur stuff. We just wanted to catch them and put them in this little cage that we built that they always got out of.
Phew.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't realize what we had on our hands.
Right.
The foxes can dig like you would not believe.
Interesting.
If they want to get to from X to Y, that's one of the ways in which they do it. Anyway, so that was my introduction to the gray fox. At that one other point there, one of the foxes got injured because at that time, this was back in the 50s, okay? At that time, the only kind of trap that was available to the likes of us were steel traps, and the kind that hold the leg, and that's what we set out. One of the little foxes broke his leg trying to escape from that trap. So I was responsible. I took it upon myself the responsibility of injuring that little gray fox. And from then on, I told my brother, I said, we're not going to do this anymore. I don't want to injure those foxes. Across the creek from where we lived was a really large orchard, apple orchard. One afternoon, it was towards sundown, my brother Al and I were walking through the orchard, and down the hill, just a little ways by one of the trees, was a gray fox reaching up to take an apple off the tree.
Oh, nice.
It was the same fox that we had injured. And when I saw that, my heart sunk.
Oh.
Because we tried to put a splint on that, we're 13, 14 years old.
Right.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And so that was the last time I saw that little fox. And that firmed up my attitude toward no more trapping, no more hurting, no more injuring these incredible little animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then, life continued. And I went off, high school, college, got married. It was decades later, that I was out at the Palo Alto Baylands. I was birding, actually, and looking for Bullock's orioles. and what happened was that I came around a corner, and ahead of me, about maybe 50 feet or so, was a gray fox sitting at the side of the road, just casually being there.
Oh.
And I had my camera, of course, so man, up to my face goes that camera, and I'm walking towards this fox, taking picture after picture after picture. And that fox didn't move. I got up to the gate. There's a steel gate there.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh, that fox has got to have rabies or something like that, So I looked for any overt signs of oddities and, the way it was handling itself and so forth.
Right.
Yeah. Just got up, walked back into the brush. That incident right there began the whole journey that I've taken over the past 10, 11 years.
Interesting. Yeah. So So I've been to Baylands many times over the years, and I've never seen fox there. And I think you were just meant to be the fox whisperer. You know, I don't think that happens to very many people, does it? I know we have them on our property here, but I never see them. I capture them on our game camera, and yeah. So
It
that
should be a matter of where you put that camera.
yeah.
Mhm.
So that's amazing. So that was your first experience, and then was that when you started to begin and found the Urban Wildlife Research Project?
Oh, there were about 2, maybe 3 years in there where we didn't have a name for it. But Greg Kirkes came along. He entered the scene and wanted to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
Other people had wanted to work with me before Greg came along, but it seemed like every time their only interest was to see a live gray fox.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. But Greg was a real naturalist.
Yeah.
And he had already a background that was quite substantial. And so when we teamed up, one morning we were walking through what we called Fox Hollow, and I said to Greg, I think we ought to pull this together as maybe a partnership, or and do something formal with what we're doing, because we're really making some progress here.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot. And he said, well, what should it be? And I just off the top of my head, I said, well, something like the Urban Wildlife Research Project.
Yeah.
And that stuck. Okay. And that's how it came to be. But maybe 2 years or 3 years before, I was pretty much on my own, and I was just learning what the foxes were all about. And one of the things that I did that I think made the foxes less skittish, okay? Not that they were totally unskittish, but they were less so, was, first of all, they have a curiosity factor that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are curious about everything. And secondly, I would sit across the road from them. I finally found out there was a family there, not just that one fox.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There was a family there. And I sat across the road from where they lived. And the young ones would come out to the edge of the road, and they would lay there, and they'd watch me watching them. And I was jotting down notes as to, what was going on with them, what they were doing, and so forth like that. And I realized at one point, what I'm doing here is writing a log. And I'd come back to my computer and my notes and everything and put it it was just a running document of what I had seen.
Yeah.
And then when Greg and I formalized it more, we formalized the documentation more too. And so now I have a log of probably 10 years at least.
Wow.
That is well over 1 million words.
Wow.
So when I die and people look at that log, they've got almost a daily log for 10 years.
Wow. That's amazing. So I think it was helpful that you didn't try to approach the fox like that you were just observing and be able to get them in their own behavior with that family. Yeah.
But I forgot to add something.
Yeah. Okay.
I talked to the foxes.
You did? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I got to the point where I'd say something like, "What you doing over there, little fox?" Or
yeah.
Do you have a good eat last night? Did the mom and dad bring in good food last night? and I just do things talking at them.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I know they didn't understand my words, but they got used to my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, piqued their curiosity too. And it came to the point where when those little foxes dispersed, the pair stayed there. They raised another set of foxes, and the parents were not afraid of me. and they would come out on the road, and they were really comfortable. Okay? And in that comfort,
That's amazing.
In that comfort, they transferred to their young that I was not a threat.
Yeah.
And I think that they trusting me then became very, very important, because it opened up areas of their behavior that I probably would never have seen.
Yeah. And it gives you that expertise now to be one of the ones to be able to share this behavior so we can understand them better and help protect them better. So before we get talking on the gray fox a little bit more and share the story, we do have a couple comments too, but I'll read those after. I'm going to play a little 14-second video that you shared with me about two fox greeting themselves. And you said this was at the Baylands, correct? That you were able to capture this on a game camera. And I just want people to see how beautiful these animals are, which you can tell by the picture behind you as well, but you can see them in motion here.
Maybe this would be a good time to introduce Laimos.
Let's hear about Laimos.
Laimos is the male. He's in the picture here. Laimos is the male of the pair, and he's one of the foxes that you just saw on that little clip. And his mate is, at this point, at this date, she is ultra skittish.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure that I've been debating back and forth on whether they have any pups back in the bushes or not. And the way she's acting, they do, but I've never seen. I haven't seen them, and I should have seen them by now, at least on one of my cameras. So that question is still up in the air.
So you're not sure if they have pups or they're just keeping them very hidden. Yeah. So that's Laimos behind you as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's gorgeous.
Laimos means long neck in Greek.
Mm. So I noticed that the gray fox do have kind of it seems like their body's kind of shorter, but they do have like a longer neck in some cases. So yeah, they're gorgeous. So I do have a couple comments and I'll just read them to you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so we have a visitor here, Nellie from England, and he said that they don't have gray foxes over there, but their native red fox has adapted very well to urbanized areas as well. And I'm hoping that that's the case here with the gray fox too. And Ron in New York says, while states like California and New York are beginning to ban the sales of new fur and designers are beginning to no longer use real fur, do you see that it's helped the population of the gray fox at all? Because it does have an incredible coat. Mm-hmm. So, have you seen a decline in that area?
No. Most of the time, most of this fur farming is taking place on the East Coast.
Okay.
Mostly. And it's usually they raise the foxes in enclosures. And that's the way they get the fur. There's very few, but there are some who actually hunt gray foxes, shoot them, and take their pelts and sell them. Mm-hmm. Their pelts are not worth a whole lot these days.
Good.
So yeah, that is good.
Yeah.
And so the frequency of hunters going out and killing gray foxes is minimal.
Interesting. Yeah, so I just wanted to share those with you before we get started too. And so let's talk about some of the unique aspects of the gray fox. I asked you the question in email. I'm like, I mentioned that they look like the African jackal. And you said genetically, the jackal's kind of like a young pup compared to the gray fox, or, I'm not sure how you worded it, but basically it's much younger than. So what is it about the gray fox? What made you say that comment?
Well, there was a study done in, I believe it was 2014 by Ben Sachs of UC Davis.
Yeah.
And Ben and his team did a genetic analysis of the gray fox, and they discovered that genetically the gray fox goes back anywhere between 8 million and 12 million years.
Wow.
And I just always cut that in half and say 10 million years.
Yeah.
You know? But that puts the gray fox as the basal or the first canid of its kind in the world. And
wow.
by the way, it first established itself in Southern California, and that might be why we have gray foxes over on the Channel Islands. But
that's right.
In any case, it is genetically the oldest canid. It beats out the wolf, your pet dog, any other, the jackal, you name it.
Yeah, I was really surprised.
Yeah. You have the elder. And the other piece to this is that they cannot interbreed with any other canid on the planet. And so when you're seeing this gray fox right there,
mm-hmm.
genetically speaking, you're looking at a lineage of 10 million years.
Wow. Wow. So they can't, like wolf can mate with dogs, so they can't. I didn't realize that. That's amazing.
I asked Ben about this too, because he's a fox expert as well.
Yeah.
And Ben said that I lost my train of thought. Where was I?
So we were talking about how that they can't mate with other species. Yeah.
And he said they tried in captivity to
mate
them and so forth, and they don't live, or they're sterile. There's just always severe problems that don't allow the young to grow to adulthood.
Wow.
So you're looking at a 10 million year old animal.
Who would have known in our area? So what is their location? Where are they located? Basically, is it just California, or are they in any Western state, or?
Yeah, they're native to North America.
Okay.
So there are only a couple places in North America that they are not found. One of them is up in the Rocky Mountains of the Montana, Idaho, and through that area.
Okay.
They're not found, and we don't know why. Because I queried professors, biologists at the University of Montana in Missoula,
mm-hmm.
and they have no answer for it.
Wow.
Out in the Great Plains, there are a couple of areas too that don't have gray foxes, but their range ranges from southern Canada up around Ontario, up in the northern Great Lakes, all the way through the United States, into Mexico, into Central America, and to Venezuela and Colombia, the northern parts of Venezuela and Colombia. That's where they live. There are variations in terms of some of the appearance of them, but they're all, the scientific name for this little fox is called, it's Uroscience cinereo argenteus. And that took me a long time to figure.
I was going to say, I wasn't going to try it. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the range, all the way from Canada to South America.
I didn't realize that, and I think that's interesting. I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask, how are they all thriving in these different ranges or locations? You know, is the population thriving overall?
I think the population, I can't be sure about this because I don't know every area.
Right.
But I think it's pretty stable. There are some areas like, where is it, Chicago, in around there, where there's been a noticeable decline, but the impact of coyotes into that area may have an influence on the decline of the gray fox, because the coyotes will prey on the gray fox.
That makes sense. And let's get back to some of the unique qualities or traits or aspects of the gray fox. So, you know, they climb trees, right? Is that indicative? Yeah. Do all fox climb trees, or is this just special to the gray fox? Yeah.
Just the gray fox. And I'll tell you a little story. When in the early days, in the 19th century, the landed people, the southern plantations, they wanted to continue the practice of fox hunting. Okay, all they had were gray foxes, but the gray foxes would streak out across a little open space up a tree.
Yeah.
The dogs would be at the bottom of the tree, howling at the little fox sitting up there, laughing at them.
Yeah.
And so
Smart.
that wasn't any fun. And so what they did was they imported from England the red fox. Now the red fox is more fun because it can't climb trees, and if you got a pack of dogs after it, it's streaking across open spaces. And so that's how we get red foxes in this area. Most of the red foxes around the world have been imported out of Europe and England.
Yeah, I read something like that. So do they have unique claws then that allow them to be able to get up trees differently? Like almost like a cat in a way?
Yeah. And so they have semi-retractable claws. They're so in mud you can see the claws. They can't retract all the way like a cat can.
Yeah.
They can partially, and they're pretty darn sharp.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And so they go up the tree. They don't pull with their forelegs. They push with their hind legs.
Okay.
And this is, can I tell a story here?
Oh yeah, I love stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There was this one little pup. She was, I called her Daring because she had no fear. I mean, that little pup had no fear of anything. She became the alpha pup of the 5 that were born in her litter. But in order to not get along with, but she was a tyrant, okay? And she would chase and she would fight with her siblings and I never got a reason why, but she would do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Now, I went off on vacation to Montana where I go every year, okay, except this year.
Yeah.
And when I came back, Daring had an injured hind leg and a flopped ear. She had been in a fight.
Yeah.
And she could not climb trees. She tried, I have video of her trying to climb with her siblings that are up in the trees, just dancing around up there and chasing one another.
Yeah.
And this sad little fox is down there trying to join them, but she can't because her hind leg is injured and she can't push.
Oh man. Oh.
Okay. Mama Bold is her mother. Okay, comes over to her and kind of nudges her, and it's like almost like Mama is saying, "It's okay, it's okay."
Yeah.
You know? And so then what happened was that over the period of about a month and a half, she healed. Oh, I left out a crucial part.
Okay.
When she was injured, the other 4 pups relegated her to the bottom of the hierarchy.
Yeah, no longer the bully anymore. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They were teaching her a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they were doing. When she healed, they gave her back her position.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Or she took it, or she made sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I think she learned a lesson from that, because her behavior changed, and I don't know. I think she did.
Oh, interesting. So she wasn't as quite a bully, just a leader at that point afterwards.
No.
Yeah. Well, it's good that she healed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They have a remarkable immune system. And I would say this. I would say that probably most of the wildlife that we have across the board have really solid, good immune systems.
That makes sense.
Because in the beginning, when I first saw my first fox with a limping, obviously an injured front paw, I was ready to take it down. I mean, capture it in a live trap and take it down to the animal hospital and get it all fixed up. You know? But I didn't. I waited and I waited and I watched and I documented what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And within a good, well, about a month, maybe a little bit less, that paw healed up and he was trotting off just like normal. And I was really, really surprised at how fast that healing took place.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a pretty good injury.
Is it partially due, or probably mainly due, that they're not hybridized? You know, they're not with other species mixing with, you know, other that may weaken their immune system.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that could be.
Yeah, well, that's pretty amazing. But you know, so let's talk about, since we're talking about their immune system. Can we jump and talk about what happened in 2016 and, you know, what caused the decimation of that, and get into that a little bit? Do you mind sharing that story of the die out that happened?
I think it's a pretty important story.
Yeah.
In the big picture of things. Where do I begin? 2016 was a confusing year. Because Mama Bull had 5 pups, okay, and she was raising them as normal. Only one of her breasts was black, and I couldn't determine what was causing that, you know. So she was nursing with 5 nipples. And she had a crowd of pups under her and so one by one, the pups started going missing. And I couldn't figure out why or where or anything like that. Then we come toward the end of the year in 2016, and we're at the height of our drought.
Right.
And the water supply out there died. I mean, it evaporated. And there must have been a real high tension within the community of gray foxes. So what began to happen in November, by this time, Mama, the last time I saw Mama was in June. After that, I didn't see her anymore. And that confused me, because at that point in time, I could call to the foxes by name and they would come.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd call for Mama and there was no Mama. I didn't know at that time that she had died.
Yeah.
And by the time we get to November, we have Gray, her mate. We have a helper female out there, 2 pups, and a little straggler that came through and disappeared and came back. He was all over the place. He was a neat little fox too.
Yeah.
But so we start getting reports from people. There's a dead fox out on this trail, you know. So Cody at Animal Services would go out, pick up the fox, take it back to the Animal Services, and he'd give me a call or a text, and he'd say, "We got another one. You want to come out and see if you can identify?" And at first, I was all for that.
Yeah.
I soon realized that in death, I could not identify the foxes. It was just beyond. I mean, they all looked roughly the same.
Right. So it was by behavior that you identified them, basically,
Partly by behavior and partly the coloration, because Gray was a gray.
Yeah.
He had very little red on him, and so we start getting these kinds of reports. Then I'm finding dead pups on the trails, some of the trails that are out there. And we get a call from the water treatment plant. One of the workers over there had just seen a gray fox that was staggering around like it was drunk. And within 15 minutes, it fell over and was dead.
Oh my gosh.
Now, with all of that happening, Cody decided that he was going to send one of the dead gray foxes up to Burlingame to the the SPCA, I think it is.
Okay.
And they took that first gray fox, did an analysis as best they could, then sent it to the state of California, to UC Davis, where the head veterinarian and their vet, what do you call it, laboratory is. And the head, Deanna, wrote back, and she said that if you find another gray fox, this was only the first one, if you find another one, send it to me and I'll do the necropsy. We had another one, we sent it to her, and meanwhile we're piling up other foxes over here.
Oh my gosh.
And Deanna did the necropsy. She got back to us and said it was canine distemper.
Wow.
That canine distemper wiped out 25 foxes in a range from San Francisco Creek south to Adobe Creek. And that's about, as the crow flies, that's probably about 1.5 miles.
Wow.
There were 25 foxes that were locked into that territory, and it was overpopulation. Okay. And that's part of the reason why the canine distemper was shared with so many other foxes. If they had been more spread out,
right,
then the congestion of the foxes, especially down on Matadero Creek, would never have happened. And so that led me to thinking, maybe we need to see what the health of this environment is, for not only the foxes, but for the raccoons and the possums and all the rest of the wildlife lives out there.
Right.
So that developed into the collaring project, which we're right now in the process of trying to get funded so that we can better understand where the habitat is for the foxes along the western edge of the San Francisco Bay.
Right.
And where there's habitat but no foxes. Okay, why? What we plan on doing is we plan on doing a large-scale assessment of the dispersal range of the young gray foxes, go into those areas, make an assessment of the health, and what we probably are going to wind up doing is creating linkages between one habitat and another habitat so that there can be open travel between them.
Open corridors. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that will then, if we're successful at doing that, we will then upgrade the health of the wildlife and the environment all the way along the western side of the San Francisco Bay.
Oh, that'll be great. Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're trying to find ways also under highways. Like, I'm sure 101 is a problem there as well.
This is not with the Urban Wildlife Research.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is with the Guadalupe Coyote Resource Conservation District.
That's right. Which
I'm a board member of.
That's right. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, it all goes together. I wanted to ask about distemper, how do they get that? I mean, so if they are able to disperse, would their immune systems, if they're not all congregated in one small area like that, would they be able to fight it off if they, with their immune system, if they weren't exposed by so many other animals? Or how does that work?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Once I found out that canine distemper was the problem, and that canine distemper is sometimes overtly visually apparent, because they have in the corners of their eyes, I don't know if people can see this, but in this corner of their eye, a pus-like oozing takes place.
Okay.
There. And it can be so serious that it blinds them. It just takes over their whole eye and they can't see. But Gray, at the end of his life, Gray had both eyes were shut, closed.
Oh, yeah.
He came for water. I called him one afternoon. He came for water out of the brush, and I had to turn on a hose to give him water. And he lapped up all the water that he could, and he headed back to where he had emerged out of the brush. Now, I could call Gray. I could say, hey, Gray, and he'd turn and he'd maybe come back. He didn't. He went straight ahead. That's the last time I saw him. He died back in the bushes back there.
Oh, poor thing.
So once I found out that it was this eye oozing, I went back into my archives, my photo archives, and I found that Mama Bold, when she was a young female of about a year and a half old, she had that oozing in her eye.
Okay.
And her immune system was able to fend it off all the way through until 2016. That was in 2012.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
she was able to hold it off for that length of time before she succumbed to it. And again, I think the drought had a lot to do with their demise.
Right. Yeah. And and stress. I'm sure stress and change like that stresses our immune system as well, and not being able to get water. But wow. So how are the populations? They're coming back, right? Maybe a silly question. Can you vaccinate them against distemper if you don't want to do anything like that?
Well, you can't. Because with distemper, it's like pups that are born, your pet dog. Okay, pups that are born there, they have to have that canine distemper shot early on in their life.
Oh, okay.
When they're pups, and that'll last them for the duration of their lives.
Yeah.
So if you try to administer the canine distemper drug to an adult, it doesn't have any effect. So you see the problem.
Yeah.
How do you capture those little boogers that are off their brush?
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah. So the key is opening up their corridor system so they have access to more resources, more space to live and eat. So
yeah. There's plenty of food out there.
Yeah. What's their primary diet? Is it small rodents or what?
It changes during the course of the year. Early on, when they have their pups, it's basically a meat-based diet. Okay, and rodents are a good part to that.
Yeah,
too. But other things as well. Snakes. I even have photographs of Gray hauling back to the den a young Canada goose.
Oh, really? That seems pretty big.
Yeah. He'd go about 10 yards or so and drop it and pant and then go for another. And until I followed him all the way back to the den area where the pups were.
Yeah.
And when he dropped it in front of the pups, by that time they had established their hierarchy, and so the alpha pup dove in and started taking apart this goose, and Gray went over under a bush and went to sleep.
He's like, I'm exhausted. I hauled this thing here. They must have pretty strong teeth and mouth to be able to do that. Do they? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, do they hunt in packs or are they solitary hunters? Are they like wolf where they will maybe hunt in a pack or group?
No, they don't.
Okay.
They don't hunt okay. But they're not truly what you would call solitary. They're not like an opossum. Opossum is solitary.
Yeah.
But you see, the male and female both raise their young. They both have roles that they play. And so as a result of that, they will oftentimes, Laimos and Big Eyes, his mate, I see them on trail cameras going together, on the hunt and hunting along edges of this channel. And sometimes I have one video on the trail camera of both of them moving along, obviously hunting, and all of a sudden Big Eyes, does a flip, jump, leap over into the bushes, and not the bushes, the grass, tall grass. And she comes out with a rodent in her mouth, and she comes out. Now, one thing about foxes that you have to understand, in their vocabulary or consciousness of anything, they have no concept of sharing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't share. So she had her food. He had to go off and get his own. She wouldn't share that with him.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. No communal meal there.
No.
You're on your own, buddy.
But they travel together at night quite frequently. So they're not completely solitary in that respect. And I've been I was going to pull together an article about that the designation of solitary is misplaced.
Well, you mentioned to me in our previous conversations they're more cat-like than dog-like in some ways, and that's what I thought of too, the way they hunted and they're able to climb trees and all that. But that's interesting. Do they mate for life? So once unless of course one dies or something, but do they stay together as a pair through each mating season if they can?
Yeah.
Okay.
They tend to.
Yeah.
It's not an absolute. I saw a divorce.
Did you?
Out there, and in the literature too. It makes a point in this one piece that if you have a high density situation like we had out there, then monogamy doesn't always hold true.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're spread out in terms of their normal territorial requirements, they tend to be there for life. Now I saw Gray and Mama, they were together for life. That was all there was to it.
Yeah.
They were a great pair. And over on the creek, and then we had the alpha male Dark and his mate Cute. And there's not only a contrast there in terms of the behavior.
Yeah.
Mama Bold and Gray were great parents. They took care of their young.
Mm-hmm.
That was their job. Over there on the creek, Dark and Cute couldn't care less if they were parents.
Interesting. I know many humans like that too.
They didn't like the job of being a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all documented. I got that all in the log.
That's interesting. What is their typical litter size, and how long do they live? Their lifespan?
Typically, their litter size is 3.5 to 4, but they can have as many as 7.
They can. Wow.
They can, yeah. But I've never seen 7. 5 is the tops that I've seen.
Yeah, probably depends on amount of resources, huh? That for litter size or no? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the second part of your question?
This is actually from Ron in New York, but he also asked, how long do they live? What is their lifespan?
In the wild, around 8 years, 9 years sometimes, right in there. But in captivity, they've been known to live for 15 years. Wow.
That's a long time.
Up into that range, yeah. But that's in captivity.
Yeah.
So you don't have the hardships of out there in the wild,
Yeah.
That's a pretty rough place to be for, out there. A like in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, there was a research study that found out that we've got a lot of mountain lions up in there. You know?
Yeah.
And when a mountain lion leaves a scrape or in the ground, the gray foxes will come and wallow in that the mountain lion has left. And what they do is they take on the scent of the mountain lion.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And that's a way of protecting themselves. Look at the brilliance.
I know.
Of those things. I mean,
that's amazing. I know you said that they're just intelligent animals. So you also mentioned something about them being able to you mentioned like their intelligence is based on their ability to plan for future and their thinking patterns. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. I was the first time I ever saw a thinking pattern of foxes was I was on a trail headed toward my trail cameras. I knew that there were some foxes in the area. I didn't know what they were doing or anything. I was just heading to my trail cameras.
Yeah.
I was up on this hill and I turned around and I looked behind me and there were 3 foxes following me. Okay. And so they come into down this slope off the hill, and there's water down in there. Now they're like cats in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like to get their paws wet, but if they have to, they will.
Okay.
And so 3 foxes line up at the water's edge. I already had crossed part way, and I turned to look back and see what they were doing.
Yeah.
The first one was Big Guy. Okay, Big Guy was a young pup. Well, he was probably about 8 months old by that time, 7, 8 months old. And he looked at the water. He looked at where I had gone. He jumped in and walked right through the water and everything, just impulsively, so to speak. The next one was Big Eyes, and she was the alpha female of the area. Okay, and she's looking too, and she's checking things out. And she decides that she's going to go around the edge and she's going to get her feet wet, but she's going to go around the edge in the shallowest part of the water that she can find. And that's what she did. She walked that way. Okay, so before she did though, she was calculating where she was going to get across that water, or had to do that. Cute, on the other hand, she really did not like getting her feet wet. Okay? And she was the last one to assess how she was going to get across without getting wet. And she measured she stood there looking at a willow tree that was out in the water. And that willow tree was bent over a little bit. And it was a good maybe 8 feet or so from where she was standing.
Yeah.
She jumped all the way across to that willow tree, landed on the willow tree, took the trees over, and did not get her feet wet.
Good for her. Oh, that's amazing.
Now, there you have, in my view anyway, there you have 3 different ways of resolving a single problem.
Yeah. Yeah, they're thinking. Yeah.
They're thinking. And there was another thing that got me to think, wondering what's going on in that mind of theirs. And that issue right now is the most important part of my research.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I came upon this pup. Okay. It was about maybe 4 months old. He was sleeping. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I just walked up to him and watched for a little while, and all of a sudden his hind leg jumped out. He kicked out his hind leg,
Yeah.
He started to move a little bit like that. And so I thought, ooh, that little guy's dreaming.
Yeah.
You know? What kind of a dream is going on in his mind?
Yeah, like is he chasing a cottontail or something? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, does it even have an image in
Yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah.
Because their hearing and their olfactory, their sense of smell is hyper. We cannot even begin to come close to
Yeah.
understanding what is going on at that level. So I started thinking this thing through, and I came to the conclusion that that little fox was probably not seeing, but the dream was probably in odor
Yeah.
and in sound. So what does an odor sound like?
Yeah. Yeah, and how do they see it actually?
Does that understanding go on in there?
Yeah.
One other thing too, I think
Interesting.
when as scientists examine the quote intelligence of other animals and other fowl and so forth, we always bring to it our way of thinking. And if that matches up with us, then we think they're intelligent.
Right. Right.
I think we're off base when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think they have an intelligence that is radically different from our own. It's a different paradigm.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I
And
could see
I've
that.
always said I need a Rosetta Stone to get to that interior and understand the meaning of what they're doing. Yeah, I'm not sure I phrased that right, but
No, I get it. And you're probably like the person to figure out a lot of what they're doing by being out there every day, twice a day, watching them, watching their behavior. You know, that's how you're going to kind of create that.
most of it is pretty routine.
Yeah.
You know? But then, boom, something will pop up, says, whoa, look at that. Wait. And then what I have to do is if I see an event like that, I have to hold off. I have to sometimes consciously hold off and say, okay, now you see something like that, similar to that links in, and if I see it 4 or 5 times happening like that, then I can draw a conclusion.
Right.
It's always a tentative conclusion, but it's a conclusion.
Yeah.
About that behavior, you know. So I've learned over the years not to rush into saying, "Oh, that's their behavior. That's the way they are."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This is what they do.
I
Yeah.
used to when I was young, taking this. Yeah.
Well, it's hard. I'm sure it's hard not to, but it sounds like they all have such unique personalities that you would have to get a multiple sample to figure this out. So.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bill, we came up on an hour, and I could probably talk a lot more. I don't know what your time is like, but yeah, I thought we'd maybe just kind of segue into how people can learn more about your research and the gray fox. You know, how do they find you? How can they help? You know, how can we help with these corridors and research?
Well, they can go to our website first of all. Everything is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at the urbanwildliferesearchproject.com. Okay. And there we have one of the things that we really need now is funding for this collaring project, because we need to move ahead on that as soon as we have pups that we can track. Okay.
How soon do you collar them? Like what age? Or how old do they have to be?
They have to be 6 months or older.
Because they're not going to grow that much anymore, or
well, yeah, but it's also when you capture a fox or any animal really in a live trap, the stress level is super high.
Oh yeah.
And if they're younger, it can kill them. Okay, so the rule book says 6 months or older. And then you're taking a little bit of a chance too, because but we have a team member that is an expert at trapping and collaring and so forth. So we're covered there.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you on that, but I was interested.
So we're looking for enough money, $30,000, to initiate this collaring campaign and make the Baylands along the San Francisco Bay a healthy place for wildlife to live. And then, so yeah, there are two donation buttons, and Give Direct is one of them, and that's the one we prefer, but PayPal is also on there.
Okay. And that's on your website, on your homepage. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And they can also sign up for a newsletter there as well, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Right. And yeah, because I put out a monthly gray fox report, and that report goes out to a large number of people. I don't know what it is right now offhand, but it's been growing in terms of readership.
That's great.
And that would keep you up to date on probably about 90% of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you could periodically, monthly come in and read an update on what's happening. If these two have pups back there, and I find out that they do, then that's going to be in the Gray Fox report.
Oh, good.
Right,
okay.
Right now, it's so routine that on the one that just went out, I went back to 2016 and put together a 2-part series that covers a lot of what we just talked about.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. Oh, you know what I didn't ask you, and I hope we're not running too late for everybody, but the Facebook foxes, are they still running around campus there? I mean, there's probably not a lot of people there right now, but wasn't that like designated a wildlife area because of the gray fox that decided to breed there?
Yeah, it was what was it
on
called?
Facebook
National
campus.
Wildlife Federation has a plaque there. It's a designation that this is a special place.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, I've read that.
But the gray foxes at Facebook are up on the roof.
Yeah.
They found their way from the ground up on the roof to where it's safe.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear.
They have had their pups over a couple of 2-3 years.
Wow.
Up on the roof there. But I checked with my contact there at Facebook about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and she said nobody knows what's going on up there.
Yeah.
There's nobody on campus, and
right.
So she didn't know whether they had pups up there this year or not. And
well, that oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that shows adaptability to humans for sure, because there's pictures of them with people working on their computers and pups playing around in the corridor right outside, and it's just yeah.
And there's one video of these workers. It was a hot day, and they were working outside, and somebody had taken off their shoes. And the fox came along and took their shoes.
Oh no. That's great. I'll have to look that up. Is that on YouTube or something? Can we see it?
No, it's on the Facebook foxes.
Oh, okay. Probably their Facebook page.
Yeah, I don't know if it got posted or not. There's 2 parts to the Facebook.
Oh.
There's the public side, and then there's a private side that the public never sees.
I gotcha.
Except me. I get to see that.
Well, I think that's great that those fox are there and they're adapting and yeah. So is there anything else that we should know? I kind of interrupted you when we were talking about how to help. So I think it's important if people can donate, especially if you're in this area. This is such a good cause because donating to this project, I think, not only helps the gray fox, but it helps a number of wildlife in our area by connecting these habitats and doing the research to find out where we can connect these habitats to avoid, a lack of biodiversity or whatever, to, get them spread out in the area. So, and if you're not in this area, look up where you can help in your area and urban wildlife areas. And I think that's important for everybody to know that, this is happening everywhere. But
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when we were selected to participate in a project out of Zurich, Switzerland.
That's right. Yeah.
I was so amazed that I asked Katharina, who's heading up this whole project in Zurich, I asked her, I said, why us?
Yeah.
You know? And she said, when I went searching for whatever I was going to find in the United States, she said, I put in a few keywords that I was searching everywhere. They're the same keywords.
Yeah.
And she said, your website came up number one.
That's awesome.
And she said, as I read through what you were doing and everything like that, it just made a whole lot of sense that you were it.
Yeah.
I'm so honored.
Congratulations. That is a big honor. And so you're going to present all this in Zurich with, is it Katarina you said? And when will that be? You probably don't know now with everything with the pandemic, but
she wasn't sure, but she said probably a year and a half.
Okay.
And this was from February. She flew out here to California to meet and have lunch with myself and Davey.
Nice.
Davey is another incredible human being. Anyway, so that, yeah, we met and had lunch, and I took her out to the Baylands, and that's when she told me that we were it. And she had a trail camera to give me to document out there.
Yeah.
So, like tomorrow, I'm going to send her probably about 700 files.
Wow. So images and videos and such. Yeah.
Yeah, they're videos.
Yeah.
Wildlife passing in just one single area for a year.
Yeah.
The camera will not move out of that area, and so we'll just see what travels through there, the changes in the trees and in the environment and so forth like that over a period. And she will boil it all down to 90 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And 9 other countries around the world are also coming in to do this. And I'm really anxious to meet these other researchers out there in the field. And I asked her about that. I said, when can we get together, on Zoom?
Yeah.
And maybe about 2 months from now. And that was last month.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that'll be exciting. Yeah. Find out what other work is going on. And there's great use and benefit and collaboration like this. I love it. So, wow. She's got a job ahead of her. All those files. Good for her.
Professor of history, too, at the University of Zurich.
Wow.
She's got graduate students that she has to take care of.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. That's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But, well, I shouldn't keep you too long. And yeah, I don't know that we haven't received any more questions, but if we did miss questions, we'll try to answer those on Facebook after this is posted. And yeah, thank you for all the work you do, Bill. I think I'm very interested in gray fox now. So
yeah, it's an honor for you to ask us to be on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm trying to address more local things where I feel I can help. I do talk to people in Africa and such, but I read about you in Beth's book and wanted to learn more and looked you up. So
glad you did.
Me too. Yeah, I hope we stay in touch. Yeah.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Well, you can stay on, but thank you, everybody. And Sherry says thank you so much for the great information. So everybody have a great day and a safe and happy 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio.